Hey, it's me, Nalthazar, and welcome to another Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest video. Today's video is going to be my Achieving Perfection episode for the bottom node, the Adventure node Lands, in Rise of Adventure. So, let's get into it. The bottom node in Rise of Adventure is the land node. So you need to win the fight, you need to match 24 or more gems of your Planeswalker's colors during the fight, and you need to summon 3 or more land supports during a fight. So this one of the two different nodes is definitely the easier of the two. Matching 24 gems of your Planeswalker's colors is pretty easy because you don't actually have to make the physical swap to get that match. Just any time that gems are matched, it's going to count towards this. So Cascades will count, gem conversion will count, all that good stuff. It's not swap, it's match. As for Landscape, because of landforming, that ability is incredibly easy to achieve for the most part also. You just run some landformers and some lands, and you're going to reach that landscape. So really, this is kind of just a win, but make sure that you have cards in your deck that are going to be able to handle that. Now, I'm going to go ahead and show off the decks that I would suggest for this node, and then I'll get into how I would build for it if you can't make one of the decks. So, the first deck is for newer players, and for newer players, like brand spanking new, I would use Nissa Sage Animist, because her first ability and her third ability are both going to convert gems to green, which is going to make it pretty easy for you to reach that identity. And then there's just a lot of cards in green in general that are going to help you get lands. So I'd go with something like this for the following reason. One, you've got some pretty decent access to gem conversion. So here for our lands, we're running Gingerbread Cabin, and we're also running Branch Loft Pathway. This is going to be a convert to green. You can go ahead and use other lands if you want. If you have Castle Garenbrig, by all means throw that in. For landforming, I threw in Colony Ambush, which is going to give you a source of removal and landforming, which is always good. And then for the Migratory Greathorn, if you're unfamiliar with this card, right, this is going to mutate and fetch a land and put it into play under your control. So if you mutate this thing onto something, you're going to start fetching lands. So you're going to fetch your Gingerbread Cabin, or you're going to fetch your Pathway. And so in doing that, you're going to go ahead and achieve that land objective. Reclaim the Wastes is going to serve a few purposes. It's going to help you with that match 24, but it's also going to, with the kicker, get you the landforming card, in this case, Colony Ambush. Then for our other creatures, we've got Conclave Naturalists, which are going to destroy opposing supports, which is huge. You definitely want support removal. And we've got Stonecoil Serpent, which is going to be a relatively decent way of blocking your opponent's critters, and then ultimately getting potentially hexproof or protection from colors. It's just a solid creature. It's not like the greatest thing since sliced bread, but it's definitely really good. Then to just get a little bit more removal, Ram Through is a solid removal card in green right now. You're going to deal damage to equal to the power of target creature you control to your opponent's first creature. So that's going to bypass hexproof, and it's also not going to have damage dealt to you. So it's not like fight in that you take the damage. Also, you just strictly deal the damage, which is really nice. And then finally, to cap this deck off, I've also got some card draw. Card draw is really nice to have. You definitely want to make sure that you're running card draw. And so here it's going to be in the form of Return of the Wild Speaker. So this is what I'd run for newer players. For players with more complete collections, but that don't yet have a lot of Zendikar Rising cards, I actually went ahead and put together this Garruk Cursed Huntsman deck. It uses 0 new cards. So if you're like, I haven't really had a chance to get the new cards yet, Nalthazar, don't worry. This deck consists of no new cards. This is all old cards, and it's definitely going to reach the objectives. So here for our lands, we've got Castle Garenbrig and Gingerbread Cabin. Those are both phenomenal choices. They're both going to convert to green. Garenbrig is going to potentially get you more conversion. We've got Avatar of Growth, which is going to convert gems, and it's going to fetch 2 lands, so this is going to help with both objectives. This is actually kind of the best card in the game for this particular node, in my opinion. We've got Beanstalk Giant, which has the flip side Fertile Footsteps that's going to convert gems to green. This is going to help with the identity. And then for the last creature, we've got Woodland Bellower, which is going to go ahead and fetch you your next green critter, probably Beanstalk Giant or Avatar of Growth. This deck is running Cultivate, which is going to convert gems for you and fetch a land and give it half mana. It's running Once Upon a Time, which is going to help fetch your creatures or your lands, either way, but both ways, that's going to help you with this particular deck. We've got Escape to the Wilds to help you draw some cards and give your lands full mana. And then we've got some removal, which is definitely needed in the form of Mythos of Nethroi, which is going to destroy a creature, and because we've got a bunch of green gem conversion, is also going to be destroying a support. And we've also got Ruinous Ultimatum, which is going to wipe the board. Then to get a little bit of extra removal, right, we're using Garrett Cursed Huntsman. And so Garrett Cursed Huntsman's second ability, Stalk the Prey, is going to serve as bonus removal. This deck is going to be an excellent all-around deck that should definitely enable you to reach all of the objective points every single time you play it. This is definitely a deck that I think you could very easily go perfect with. Now, as for what I think is the very best deck that you can play on this node, it's actually going to be the Nissa of Shadowed Bows. So if you did not get Nissa for when she came into the vault, you're going to want to definitely make sure that you pick her up for crystals. I gave her maybe an A tier when I reviewed her, but she's definitely an S tier for this event. So the first thing to realize about Nissa of Shadowed Bows is that she's got two different abilities that are going to serve as gem conversion in Shadowed Bow and Hissing Quagmire, right? Or the Bitter Connection, which is going to make the Hissing Quagmire. All three of her abilities are going to make Emblem Land, and Emblem Land. So all of Nissa's abilities are going to make lands, which is going to make that landscape objective really easy to achieve. And then if you factor in that she's also going to be able to convert gems, it makes it even easier. Now the deck that I would run with her is this deck right here. I think that this is kind of sort of maybe just the end all be all best deck for this particular node. You could argue that you could swap out Hagra Mauling for Mythos of Nethroi, and that would be better because it would give you a little bit more non-targeted removal. But the synergy that this deck has is absolutely filthy. So we've got Avatar of Growth, which I've already stated is, I think, the best card in the game for this particular event node, because it's going to serve as both gem conversion and it's going to fetch lands. Yasharn is kind of sort of the next best card that you can have for this node if you have the complementary cards for Yasharn. So when Yasharn enters the battlefield, you fetch the first two different cards with land forming from your library. In this case, I have two cards with land forming in my library, which are Hagra Mauling and Turntimber Symbiosis. Turntimber Symbiosis is going to let us fetch a creature from our library and put it directly on the battlefield. Hagra Mauling is going to destroy a creature the opponent controls. Both of these cards are going to be able to play lands because they both have land forming. But that means that every time we play Yasharn, we're going to be able to get a card that allows us to fetch a creature and a card that's going to allow us to destroy a creature, which means that we've got incredible control in that we could just use all of them to just keep fetching Yasharns and just get like as many Hagra Maulings as we want. We could also use the creature fetch to get ourselves the Avatar of Growth, achieve the land objective right there, boom. Like that's the land objective all on its own, because the Turntimber Symbiosis is going to make a land and our Avatar of Growth is going to get us 2 lands. So that right there is all 3 lands for landscape. Or if the opponent has a creature out and we want to make sure that we definitely kill it right there, we could go ahead and fetch Dark Hatchling and kill our opponent's creature with Dark Hatchling. So the Turntimber Symbiosis kind of lets us do anything that we want. It lets us either get Yasharn, which is going to get us kill spells and more symbiosis. We can get Avatar of Growth, which is going to get us gem conversion and lands. Or we can get the Dark Hatchling, which is going to get us removal. Then, if that wasn't enough, we've also got Realms Uncharted, and we've got Reclaim the Wastes. Both of these are going to fetch cards with land forming. Both of them are also going to convert gems to our Planeswalker colors, right? Realms Uncharted is just our Planeswalker colors, whereas the Reclaim the Wastes is going to convert to green. But this is going to fetch the first card with land forming from your library. So here, in this case, it's either going to be Hagra Mauling or the Turntimber Symbiosis. And this is going to pick for 2 of the first 4 different land cards or cards with land forming from your library. Now, if you're making sure that you actually get enough Avatars of Growth down with your Turntimber Symbiosis, that's actually going to fetch all the different lands out of your deck, and it's going to make it so that Realms Uncharted is definitely going to be able to fetch you more Turntimber Symbiosis and Hagra Mauling. Now, for my lands, I chose Castle Garenbrig and I chose Gingerbread Cabin. I mentioned those. Castle Garenbrig is not that card, is this one. With the activate green, it's going to convert 2 gems to green for each green creature you control. That's going to happen quite a lot. And because we've got Avatar of Growth in Yasharn, that's going to convert an additional 4 gems to green most turns, which is definitely nice. And then we've also got Ruinous Ultimatum because, let's face it, there are definitely going to be times where our opponents are going to play hexproof things, or things are just going to happen and get out of hand a little bit, and we want to be able to wipe the board. If you don't have Ruinous Ultimatum, then I would throw in the Great Aurora instead. That card is just fine. It's just that you can't run it you can't play it all the time like you can Ruinous because, yeah, your opponent has, bad stuff. Now, if you do play this deck, it's also important to note that Yasharn has... while it's on the battlefield, your land supports gain Resilient. That is going to make all of Nissa's abilities have Resilient, and all of the lands from land forming have Resilient also. Now, what you're going to want to do for your general gameplay is you're going to want to create this Shadowed Bow token pretty early, because you're going to be making a lot of landfall greens, which is going to give you a lot of bonus loyalty. It's also then going to give all your land supports shields, but that's really not as big of a deal. Then as soon as you've done that, because you're going to ideally get Yasharn out at some point, you're going to be safe with that Shadowed Bow staying on the battlefield as long as possible. Then you're just going to basically use this Bitter Connection ability on the bottom to draw 2 cards. So you're just going to spam this ability to keep drawing cards, because this is going to enable you to definitely complete all of your objectives. This deck is incredibly well-rounded. It uses my favorite core in the current Zendikar set of Yasharn with Turntimber Symbiosis, Realms Uncharted, and Reclaim the Wastes. I think that those 4 cards together actually make the strongest core in Zendikar Rising right now. So green is definitely powerful. It's just you definitely want to pair it with another color, and black is kind of its ideal pairing. White also works very well, by the way. So yeah, Nissa of Shadowed Bows is absolutely going to be, I think, the best way that you can go for this particular node. Now, if you can't actually build any of the decks that I've put forward, at the very least, hopefully what you can do is you can try and take elements of each of the 3 decks and put them together. So from the Garruk deck, some cards that are really good to note, right, are going to be the Cultivate, because this is going to convert gems and it's going to fetch you a land. Remember, this is going to help you with both of your objectives. If you have Cultivate, definitely go ahead and throw it in your deck, unless you're running a 3-color deck. Then I'm less fond of it. Once Upon a Time is pretty fantastic also, because it's a way of fetching creatures, and it's always really nice to fetch creatures, but it's going to help us fetch lands. Instead of running, say, Mythos of Nethroi or Hagra Mauling, you could go ahead and look through your collection for other cards that you have that are going to destroy creatures. I happen to think that green-black is the best color pairing that you can go for this particular node, but you could definitely go with a red landforming deck also. Red landforming is incredibly powerful, and so you could try and run something like a Koth deck that is running the landforming stuff like this, right? And so between Castle Embereth and Valakut Awakening and Skull Smashing, you're definitely going to go ahead and probably complete that landscape. However, if you were actually running something like this, I would pull out Skyclave Relic in favor of Dwarven Mine or one of the red pathways. So, all in all, there are a lot of ways that you could go about this. My advice is to go red-black. If you can't, is to go green-black. If you can't go green-black, green-white is an excellent option. It's very powerful. I don't think I have the green-white deck saved right now. No, I don't. I ran it in event. But it's basically the same as green-black, with the exception of I was running, instead of Hagra Mauling as the extra card, I was running, it's this exile card from Ikoria. It's white and black. It's a spell. It's 6 mana. And it exiles a critter. Dire Tactics. So that was really like the only major change to the deck. So you can run it however you want. My suggestion is pick up Nissa of Shadowed Bows, either from the vault. She's in the vault for another few hours at the time of my making this video. Or as soon as she comes out for crystals, make sure that you pick her up as soon as possible. She is definitely the best planeswalker for all of the new events, it feels like. She's very, very, very good for this. So I hope this helps you go perfect. I hope you're doing well in the event. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.